When the First Continental Congress met in 1774, John Adams recorded a remarkable story. After some debate on whether men from different denominations could pray together, Samuel Adams convinced the delegates to invite Jacob Duché to lead them. The next morning, that pastor led a 2-hour time of scripture and prayer. On that very morning, they heard about the British cannon fire in Boston. John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail that every man in that room was deeply moved. Heaven itself seemed to have appointed that psalm for that moment. Can you imagine our Congress doing that today? 2 hours of Bible reading and prayer before taking up the business of the nation? Few churches today, let alone our government, would devote that much time to corporate prayer and Bible study. But those men knew something we've forgotten. When trouble comes, we need more than policy.
They say it's all about rights, but rights can't fix a wrong that we do to God each day. How long can we stand strong? And all I got is one question left. If we turn our backs and spit in His face, is God still gonna bless the USA?
Alice Baldwin, in her monumental work, The New England Clergy and the American Revolution, observed that the signers of the Declaration of Independence didn't invent their revolutionary principles. Instead, they echoed what they had already learned from their pastors. Thomas Jefferson and the drafting committee weren't creating something new. They were compiling the biblical ideas that had been preached in the colonies for decades before 1763. Greetings, Patriots. I'm Perry Green, and this is God in America, where faith and freedom work together to preserve our nation's soul. Today, I want to take you back to the roots of America, when the pulpit shaped politics. Thomas Jefferson didn't think up liberty in isolation. It was preached from the pulpits of New England long before it was penned in Philadelphia. John Adams even wrote to Jefferson saying, "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity." And he added that those truths were as eternal and unchangeable as God Himself. Now think about that. The American Revolution wasn't just political. Our forefathers said it was spiritual. But today, many Christians act like faith and politics should never mix. We've been told that Christianity belongs in the sanctuary, not the state house. Yet the Bible speaks to all of life, our God-ordained homes, churches, and yes, our governments. Romans 13 tells us that God ordains all authority, religious and civil. Proverbs 14:34 reminds us righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Yet many preachers today avoid the topic of government altogether. They'll talk about marriage, family, or heaven, but won't touch government or public morality. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that silence equals peace, and we must go along to get along. But silence in the face of evil is not peace, it's surrender. It is approval. Our founders didn't surrender. They built this nation with what they called a firm reliance on divine providence. From the Pilgrim's Covenant at Plymouth to the Continental Congress prayer at Philadelphia, our nation's earliest leaders turned to God for guidance. When the First Continental Congress met in 1774, John Adams recorded a remarkable story. After some debate on whether men from different denominations could pray together, Samuel Adams convinced the delegates to invite Jacob Duché to lead them. The next morning, that pastor led a 2-hour time of scripture and prayer, reading from Psalm 35 from his church's prayer book. On that very morning, they heard about the British cannon fire in Boston. John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail that every man in that room was deeply moved. Heaven itself seemed to have appointed that psalm for that moment. Take the time to read Psalm 35 and put yourself in their place and notice the providence. Can you imagine our Congress doing that today? 2 hours of Bible reading and prayer before taking up the business of the nation? Few churches today, let alone our government, would devote that much time to corporate prayer and Bible study. But those men knew something we've forgotten. When trouble comes, we need more than policy, we need providence. A year later, Congress, not the clergy, called for a national day of fasting and prayer. John Adams wrote, "Millions will be upon their knees before their great Creator, imploring His forgiveness and His blessing." That's what leadership under God looks like. Even General Washington saw God's hand in the Revolution. He wrote, "The hand of providence has been so conspicuous in all this that he must be worse than an infidel who lacks faith." The Treaty of Paris, that brought formal peace between Great Britain and America, began in the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. Our founders truly believed Proverbs 3, verse 6. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Today, we've replaced prayer with politics. We've traded conviction for convenience. And when Christians speak about faith in public, they're accused of being Christian nationalists. Yet, if we remove God from government, we have no moral compass. No one can define justice, truth, or liberty. Without God, freedom loses its foundation. Our founders weren't perfect men, but they understood this truth. No nation can stand without God's blessing. So, patriots, let's recover that spirit. We need believers who will once again bring biblical conviction into the public square. Teachers, business leaders, parents, and yes, even preachers who will speak the truth boldly. Psalm 33, verse 12 declares, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." If we want that blessing again, we must reclaim that foundation. Well, thanks for joining me today on God in America. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. And if you'd like to support this ministry of faith and freedom, visit godinamerica.com. That's the word God, the letter N, America.com. And until next time, patriots, let's keep the light of national faith in God burning.